Bez Hashem, today's daf is Masechta Baba Kama Daf Hey. Just a 1 minute review of what we've discussed so far. The Mishnah said there are four Abba, Ovis, Nezikim. There are four main headings of Nezek. Ashar means ox. So either it means regel, that the ox trampled on, let's say, apples belonging to his friend, or according to Rav, it means anything. The horn, the teeth, if it eats something, Shane, and regel. Then that's called one way that the owners has to pay for the damages. Vabar, somebody digs a pit in the street, in the middle of the street, and somebody falls in. Not somebody falls in. If an ox falls in, or a keli, or let's say a bicycle fell into the pit and broke, you have to pay. The one that dug the bar. Vahamave. What is mave? So that we discussed yesterday, and it was a strange word, mave. But mave, according to Rav, means if a man does nezek, if a human being does the nezek. And according to Shmuel, it only means the animal doing the nezek with its shane, with its teeth, by eating something. And hever, we learned, is eish, fire. So if you start a fire, it spreads from your property to your neighbor's property, you're obligated to pay. One thing we discussed at the end yesterday was that all the toldos, all the subcategories of these avos will play exactly 100% the same way the av does, except one, regel. Regel has a subcategory called sroirus, where the animal is walking and shoots up rocks from as it's walking, and that rock hits, let's say, a vessel, a vase. So then that you only pay chatzi nezek. You'll only pay 50%. So the tolda is not exactly like the av by regel. Okay, now we're going to begin. So our Mishnah began. We're on Daf Dalet on the base. Tanu Rab Oishia. Okay, it's going to go quick. Tanu Rab Oishia. Rab Oishia taught a little different than our Mishnah. Our Mishnah gave a number of 4. Rav Aishi in the Brisa says there are 13 Avis Nezikim. Shloisha Avis Nezikim. The Torah speaks about 13 Avis Nezikim. How is it possible 13 ways a person does damage or his money does damage? So Shar Mechinam. Shar Mechinam means if you're an unpaid watchman and under your jurisdiction, under your watch, you were negligent. You left the door open and somebody took the item. So you're obligated to pay. A borrower has to pay under all circumstances. Let's say you borrowed something and you were negligent, you have to pay. Even if it's not your fault, lightning hits the object you borrowed, you have to pay. Noise sochar, if you're a paid watchman, then you not only you have to watch it so well that it doesn't get stolen. And so you're obligated to pay if it's stolen. And soicha means if you rent an object. So if you rent an object, you also have to pay if it's stolen. So these are examples the Torah obligates the person to pay. And then if you're a Adam, if you, let's say, got into a fight with somebody, you have to pay nezek, the damages, tsar, the pain that you caused him. Ripi, you have to pay doctor bills caused him. Sheves, you have to pay also. Shevis, you have to pay his loss of wages, Ubaishis, and embarrassment. So if you count these up, you get 9, right? And you add Vabodim as Nisan, and you add the other 4 of our Mishnah. So hot laser, now you have 13, and that's Rav Oishia's count of how many times the Torah discusses where somebody's going to have to pay because of a damage he caused. So I asked the Gemara, why didn't our Mishnah mention these other 9? Why did our Mishnah only mention 4? So Bishlam Shmuel, according to Shmuel, makes perfect sense. But this thing Mom and Kamari, but this Gufi like Kamari. Our Mishnah is discussing where something that you own, let's say an ox, does damage, but our Mishnah is not discussing whether you yourself do the damage. Because Shmuel said that Mava means shame. But according to Rav, if Mava means Adam, the humans doing the damage, listening, why don't you list out all the possible damages that an Adam does? Answers the Gemara, that's right. Tana, according to Rav, that's what our Mishnah means. Adam, anytime a human does damage, v'chol milad Adam, anything that's related to the man himself doing the damage. So then it's counted as 1. So therefore, the Gemara's question is, so then why didn't Rabbi Oshia count it as 13? Rabbi Oshia nami hotanle Adam. It says Adam, because if you're counting the 4 of the Mishnah, one of the 4 is Adam. So what are you adding on? Shemechinim, Shoyal, Naisu, Sachar. That's all included in the way Adam does damage. Answers the Gemara. Rabbi Oshia separated out as Trei Gavne Adam, 2 types of Adam. Tana, the first part of Rabbi Oshia's brisa of Shemechinam, Adam the of Nezek Tzari Peshavas Ubaishis, Tana Adam the Azek Adam. That's an Adam that does damage to another person. They got into a fight. That's a category of Adam. And then Utana, and our Mishnah, it says Adam the Azek Shor. It is discussing an Adam that does damage to a shor. So the Mava of our Mishnah is talking with an Adam got into a fight with an ox and damaged the ox. That's how he breaks it out. So for example, if you're breaking out the 2 types of Adam Da'azik Adam and Adam Da'azik Shor, so why don't you break out the shor itself? Ihochi, listen, shor nami, listen, trei gavne shor. Why don't you break out the ox doing damage into 2 parts? Listen to shor da'azik shor. Listen, it should say a category of shor doing damage to another ox. Listen to shor da'azik Adam, and list off another category of an ox doing damage to another person. So why do you lump together the damages that an ox does? Why don't you break it out into who the ox is doing the damage to? So the Gemara says, "Hi, my. Why should I break that out?" Bishlama, it makes sense to break out an Adam into 2 subcategories, because Adam the Azek Shar, when an Adam damages another ox, all you have to pay is Nezeku de Mishalim. You pay the damages, and that's it. Adam da'azik Adam, when another man damages another person, besides the damages, Mishalim Abar Dvarim, you pay 4 other things. You pay the doctor bills, the lost wages, you pay the tsar, the pain and the embarrassment. So therefore, you break them out into, but al-shar, but an ox, mali shar da'azik shar, mali shar da'azik Adam, idi nezaku de Mishalim. It doesn't matter by an ox, no matter who the victim is, whether it's another ox or another person, the only thing that the owner of the ox will have to pay is the damages. So okay, so you broke out Adam into Adam da'azik Adam and Adam da'azik Shor. But there's another Adam da'azik. The very beginning of the brisa is also a case of a man causing damage to an ox, because all the first 4 cases are cases where a person's a hired watchman or borrowed something or he's a paid watchman, where the ultimate thing that's being damaged or stolen is another ox. The Adam Da'azak Sharshu, Ukutani, and then you're breaking that out. And why isn't that included in our Mishnah's Mava? Answers the Gemara, no. Our Mishnah's Mava, Tana Hazeka de B'daim. Our Mishnah is talking about where the man does damage to another ox with his bare hands. He breaks the ox's nose or something like that. Okay, but the Ketani and the first part of Rabbi Yishia of Shemechinam, Sheicha, Naisasacha is Hazekah de Memela. It's a damage that comes without you doing something. It's, let's say the Shemechinam, the unpaid watchman, was negligent, left the door to the barn open, and somebody stole it. So it's not that he did the damage, he caused the damage. So that's why he breaks it out further. So bottom line is, Rabbi Oshia had a count of 13 times the Torah says where you can do damage and you have to pay. On our Mishnah, the count was number 4. Tan Rab Chia, the Chia had Eser Rabah of his Nesikins. There are 24 possible ways you can do damage and that you have to pay. A human can do damage by stealing something, and he tashlume kefil, he'll have to pay double. Tashlume abar v'chamisha, sometimes you pay 4 and 5. If you took the item, the shor or the ser, and you shechted it or sold it, the ganef or something. Sometimes the ganef himself, guy admitted that he stole something, so he's not going to pay kefil, but he'll pay the principal, the gazlan. Or if you outright stole something in public, you have to pay the principal. The Eidim Zoimimin. And here's a case where a person was an aid, tried to cause somebody a loss by saying, oh, so-and-so owes money, and then it turns out that you were lying. So that means the Torah says you're a Zoimimim Eidim, and you would have to pay the loss you wanted to cause somebody else. Va'oinis, if someone rapes a girl, he pays 50 shekel. Va'mafatis, somebody who seduces a girl. Va'moitzi shemra, if someone got married and then he did relations with his wife and claims his wife was not a besula. So the Torah tells if he lied, he pays 100 shekel. V'hamadame, amatame, if you make tame somebody else a kohen's truma, you do it on purpose. You touch somebody else's truma, so you cause them a loss. Now he can't eat it. V'hamadame, or if you mix up his truma with chulin, so now it's worth less. V'hamanasech, the chulin is worth less. V'hamanasech, or you take somebody's wine and you spill it and make onto avodah zarah. So you actually caused a loss to somebody else's wine. So these are examples that are written in the Torah where a person could cause damage to somebody else. So if you add all these up, plus Vahani Tleisa, the 13 of Rab Oishia, you get a total of Esrim Baba, 24. So now the Gemara is going to ask the first question. Why didn't Rab Oishia count Rab Chia's count? Rabbi Ishia, my Tamaloi Tonohani. Why didn't Rabbi Oishia count all the others that Rab Chia just mentioned? Answers the Gemara, Rabbi Oishia only talked about where you have to pay money. But if it's a fine, it's a knas, then he's not going to mention it as part of the Avis Nezikim. Well, Kefil is a knas, Abava Chamisha is a knas, so therefore he doesn't count those. So the Gemara asks, Ganav and Gazlan, the Mamain who listening, when a Ganav and Gazlan pays the principal back, so that's regular mumminess. That's the money that he owes, that he stole. So it's not a fine that he pays. So listening, why didn't Rabbi Oishia count Ganav and Gazlan? Answers the Gemara, he did count it. Because what is the case of Shaymechinam? Aktanile, Shaymechinam Vashoya. Shaymechinam is a case where a guy says, he was an unpaid watchman. They asked him, give me my ox that you were watching. He says, oh, it got stolen. He swears that it got stolen. And then it turns out that the shomer swore falsely and that he was the Ganav. So that is a case of Ganav, which is included in Shemechinam. So therefore, Rabbi Oishia did not separate out and say Shemechinam and Ganav because they're one of the same thing. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Chia name atonale Shemechinam v'Shoel. But Rabbi Chia did separate them out as two, Shemechinam and Shoel, and then he also counted Ganav. So why did he break them out? They're one and the same. So the Gemara answers, Tane, he counted Ganav twice. You could be a Ganav when you originally got the money, when you were permitted to get the money. Ashemechinam got the ox, and he was permitted to get the ox because he was an unpaid watchman. It's only later he turned around and said, oh, it was stolen, and he lied, and he swore that it was stolen, and it turns out that he himself wanted to steal it. So that's one category of a Ganav, a Kutoni, and then you call a regular Ganav who breaks into somebody's house and then steals an ox. Money that came from originally that you're obligated to pay because you did a Geneva with right away, it was prohibited. Now we go to the page. Now, back to Rabbi Oishia. Or Daf Hey, Adam Zaimimim, Dimamaynu listening. Why don't we count Adam Zaimimim as one of the? Why didn't he count Adam Zaimimim as one of the cases of like Rabbi Chia counted it? Answers the Gemara. Savalok Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Oishia held like Rabbi Kiva. The Amma Ein Mishalman Alts Piatzman. Eid Zaimimim is when he pays, when he says that so and so owed money, right? He says so and so borrowed money and has to pay. And then it turns out the Edom were lying, right? So they turned into Zaimim and Edom. So really the Torah says they have to pay the guy they wanted to cause a loss to. But or according to Rabbi Kiva, it's a very simple thing. If they would go before the Bezdin said they have to pay to the victim, they go ahead and say, oh, we admit that we were Edom Zaimimim. They put their hands up to another Bezdin and says, we were Edom Zaimimim. So they're like Knas. It's like the halacha is moide beknas, you're potter. So if you admit a fine, you're exempt from paying the fine. Don't ask me why, but if you have a fine to pay, let's say kefil or whatever fine that the Torah puts upon you, and you say you right away admit, you don't have to pay the fine. So Rabbi Kiva said that if they admit they were Edom Zaimimim before they were found guilty of being Edom Zaimimim, they wouldn't have to pay. So Rabbi Kiva holds the whole Edom Zaimimim is knas. That's why Rabbi Oishia didn't mention it. So the Gemara asks, Isava like Rabbi Kiva, If they hold like Rabbi Akiva, if Rabbi Oishia held like Rabbi Akiva, listen to Trey Gavner the Shor. Let him put break out the two categories of shor, of ox, because there are two categories of ox. It depends who the ox gored. Listen, it should have a case shor da azak shor. If an ox gored another ox, listen shor da azak adam, and break out a shor that does damage to a human being, because Rabbi Akiva held is a difference. The Tanam we learned in the Mishnah, Rabbi Akiva says, Af tam shechol ba'adam, a tam, the first time ox gores an ox, he pays what? Half. But if the ox gores a human being for the first time, mishalim b'moisen nezek shalom, you have to pay up nezek shalom, the full value of the person that you damage. And therefore, let's say the ox damaged the person and the person damaged the ox. So the extra, the balance, and we assume that the ox did more damage to the human being than the human being did to the ox. So the surplus you have to pay to make the damages whole, to pay 100% of the damage that was caused. So we see that you could break this out even further. So why didn't Rabbi Akiva, if you hold like Rabbi Akiva, you could Rabbi Oishia break out shor into two parts, shor da'azak shor and shor da'azak adam. And says the Gemara, Rabbi Akiva broke his fist, because even though a tam that does damage to an adam pays nezek shalom, but not always. The Tanya we learned in the Brisa, Rabbi Akiva yochel af tam shechav ba'ad mishalom and aliyah. I would think that a tam who did damage to a human being would pay even more than what the animal is worth. You'd have to reach into your bank account and savings to pay 100% of the damages. Talmud loima, you also loy megufa mishalom bein mishalom aliyah, that you only pay from the value of the animal that did the damage, but you don't have to pay from your out of pocket expenses. You don't have to reach out into your savings. So in a certain way, not all the time will you be paying 100%. If in case the animal is worth a lot less than the 100% damage he caused to the human being. That's why, since it's not a 100% case of paying full damages like a muad, so therefore he didn't break out, Rabbi Oishia didn't break out shor into two parts, shor da'azak shor, shor da'azak adam. Now the Gemara asks, why didn't Rabbi Oishia count ha'oines v'mafata v'maitzi shemra? Why didn't he count that in his list? Right? You pay 50 shekel or 100 shekel when you're maitzi shemra. Answers the Gemara, the mamainu, because some parts of that you have to pay mumminus. There's some parts of that are not a fine, because when a person rapes a girl, he not only pays the 50 shekel, but he also has to pay tsar, ripu, shaves, boishes. Certainly depends what he did, and therefore, why don't we count that? So the Gemara says, manashach, he didn't have to count it because he did it. Inezek tanale. He did list damages. Itzar, tanale. If pain, he tanale. He listed it. Boishes, tanale. Pagam, the value that you went down in value because now she's not a basula anymore. Hainu nezek. That's the same thing. So he did list it, albeit not outright when it concerns a rape or a seduction case. But he did list. Does have nezek tsar boishes in his list. Why should he list what's more that an oinus has to pay? He has to pay the 50 shekels. Knasa, that's a fine. But Knasa, like Kamari, that's why he didn't count Knas. He's not talking about Knas. So now, one last question. Now, those things, if someone's Natame somebody's truma, or he pours somebody's wine and makes it into avodah zarah wine, the mamaini, you cause damage and you have to pay what you damage. Listening, why didn't Rabbi Shia count it? So Manashach, he didn't count it because why? He has Hezek. If doing a damage, and you can't really see that a damage is done. When somebody's mitame, somebody's truma, when you look at the fruits of the truma, you can't tell that damage was done. It's a spiritual damage. So if you hold a damage that's not recognizable, it's still called a damage. So Tanele Nezek, he really said Nezek, you have to pay. A person that causes damage has to pay. He has it, but if causing a damage that you can't recognize is a spiritual damage, is not really a damage you have to pay. So why do you have to pay by bentama medama? It's just a fine. It's really, maybe you shouldn't have to pay, but it's only the rabbanon you have to pay. So anyway, havale knasa, it would be a knas. Ukanasu like Amari, and he's not talking. It would be a fine that the rabbis put upon you. Ukanasu like Amari, and he's not discussing fines. So therefore, Amatamim Damanasach was not listed in Rabbi Oshia's account. So the Gemara asked one last question on Rabbi Chia. Leimeksav Rabbi Chia, would you say Rabbi Chia holds Hezek Shein Nika Loishmei Hezek? Hezek that's not recognizable is not called a Hezek, because Ishmei Hezek, if Hezek Shein Nikar is called a Hezek, Hatani Le Nezek, Rabbi Chia already counted Nezek. So what is he counting? That's just like the same thing as if you punch somebody in the nose or you damage somebody's bicycle. It's the same thing. It's a spiritual damage is the same as a regular damage. So why did Rabbi Chia list it out? It must be he holds that Hezek Shein and Nikar is not considered a Hezek, it's just a fine. So it's a new novel idea. Answers the Gemara, no. He holds Hezek Shein and Nikar is really like a regular damage. But why did he separate it into two parts? Tana Hezek Timinkara. He just listed damages that you could recognize. Utana Hezek, and he listed off Hezeks that are not recognizable. So that's just made the count into number 24. So new Gemara. So now the Gemara is going to ask this question. We have three counts of Nezikim that are written in the Torah. One is our Mishnah that gives the count as number 4. The Rabbi Oshia gave the count as number 13. And Rabbi Chia gave the count of 24. So the Gemara says, Bishlam of the Tanitan, our Tana of our Mishnah, Tana Minyonai, told you the number is 4, Lemeyute, to exclude the Rabbi Oshia. He didn't want to count it the way Rabbi Oshia counted it. So that's why our Tana said the number is 24. Rabbi Oshia, who said the number is 20, who said the number is 13, Tana Minyonai, he said that number, Lemeyute Rabbi Chia, to tell you that he doesn't like the way Rabbi Chia counted it out at 24. Why do Rabbi Chia have to tell you that it's number 24? When a Tana says this is the count, he's trying to tell you some other chiddush, because I could count it up myself. I don't need him to tell me the number. So why did he say the number? The number is 24. It must be that there's something else that's not included in that list. Answers the Gemara, yes. The Ma'ut excludes Moiser Mafagal. If someone gives over, he's a moiser. He goes to the tax authorities and gets somebody in trouble, umafagel, or he destroys as a kohen, he destroys somebody's carbon by a kohen who's supposed to have in mind that the owner is bringing a katas. He's thinking shlomim, so he didn't list that. The listening, why didn't he count it in the list? Bishlam Mafagel, he didn't count Pigol, Bekachel like Kamari. He doesn't talk about damages that a kohen does, because that's limited to a kohen in the Beis Hamikdash. Ela Moiser, why didn't he list off the damage that of a Moiser? Someone who caused the damage by reporting to the authorities against another Yid, my time Leitani. Answers the Gemara, he didn't want to list that because Shani Moiser, a Moiser is the Dibure. The damage is done by his words. It's not an actual physical damage. He doesn't use his hands. He's not discussing when a person uses his hands, he uses his words to do a damage. We're talking about things that you actually physically damage. Wait, Mighty Shamra is when you put a bad name against your wife, that damage is done with your mouth. And it's written, it's counted on the list. Answers the Gemara, the dibur disbei maisu. It's done with your mouth, but it's after you did relations with your wife, and after that relations, you're saying, "Oh, my wife was never a basula." So that's why it's counted as the list in Rabbi Chia. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Chia, Edim Zoymim dibur les bei maisu. Edim Zoymim is a words that don't have a maisa, false edis uktani, and it's counted in Rabbi Chia's list. And says the Gemara, Hasam afagav the les by Maisa Rachmana Kari Maisa. Tiksiva Sisim like Kashazom Lasas Lachim. The Torah caused the whole called the whole topic of Edim Zoymim as an action, even though it really is words, a false testimony. But in the Torah's view, it's as if you did an action. So that's why Rabbi Chia counted it. But a Moiser, Rabbi Chia did not count because that's not written in the Torah. And also it's only used it's only using your words to do the damage, and that's not part of the list here. So now the Gemara asks one more question. Our Tana taught us that avos, and they call them arvois because they're subcategories. all these things, there are 13 avos or 24 avos. What are these subcategories to all these things that you listed? Really, there's not everything. Not every av has a tolda. Not every av has a subcategory. Kulin ka'avis, but they're all like avis. The shalom and meitav. They all pay from the best. In case you have no cash to pay and you're paying property to pay for the damage that you caused, you have to give from your best of your fields. My tama, tachas nisilin shalom kesef. There's a fancy gzeira shava tachas nisilin shalom kesef that we learn out everything from where it says by Shane and Regel, Meitav Sadeu, Meitav Karma Yishalom, you have to pay the best of your fields, that every other Avis Nazikim, if you're not paying cash and you're just paying with property, you have to pay from the best of your field. The Gemara continues. The Mishnah said, Lo yarei shoy karei mava. My comma, what does the Mishnah mean? Amrav Zvin the Rava, hachi comma. Lichte rachmon achada, b'teisi idach minei. Hada ama, chada machada lo yasya. What the Mishnah means to say is, why does the Torah have to tell you, let's say, Regel? Why and Shane? Let the Torah just write Regel and not write Shane. And then the Mishnah goes on and says, no, if a Torah would not only write Regel, I would not know Shane from Regel. The Torah had to write out Shane as well. So then the Mishnah says, my comma, what does the Mishnah mean? This is what the Mishnah means. We go to Amud Beis, let the Torah write two. Let's say the Torah should write Shane and Regel and not write Eish, because I could, on my own, figure out Eish. The Mishnah says, 1 from 2, I wouldn't be able to learn. I would not be able to learn. If the Torah, let's say, only obligated you to pay for your animal, I would not know Eish. Maybe the Torah only obligates you to pay only because it's Ruach Chaim. The thing that's doing damage is a live being. Therefore, you should be careful. But maybe Eish, maybe the Torah wouldn't pater you, would exempt you from paying Eish. That's why the Torah had to write all 4 stories in the Torah. Shar, bar, ma, veheva. Fine. Then the Gemara just says like this. Amar Rava, v'kula kishadis bar benayu asur kulam b'bar shad levar mekerem. Every mishum the ikal mifrach mala kulin shekemu adam et chilasim. We're going to end off over here. Rava says a very novel thing. He says that really the Torah didn't have to write all the cases of Shar Bar Ma Beheva. You just write Bar, and you write, let's say, Shane or Regel, just 2 of them, and I would learn out others, except I would learn out every one of them, every type of damage, except Keren. Because Keren is different. I could ask a question. A Keren is all the others, they're forewarned right from the beginning. It's the way of an animal to walk and do damage. It's a way of a pit. Once it's opened on the street, it's inevitably going to cause damage. But for an animal to gore with its horns, it's not inevitable that's going to gore with its horn. It's more like something that's unprepared for. Maybe the Torah would not obligate the owner of the animal to pay if his animal gored, because it's a shock that the animal gored. So that's why the Torah had to write keren. Even according to the opinion that says adarab, just the opposite. Keren adifa shekavonasi lahazik, afila keren nami asya. Even with keren, I would have learned it out from the others. In other words, according to another opinion, Keren, of course, once you see that the animal is getting angry, of course the Torah would obligate the owner to watch that ox. So even if the Torah did not write that you have to pay when your ox gores, I would know on my own that the ox, that you would have to pay. Because once the Torah wrote bar and on any other one, Shane, Regel, then I would automatically know Keren as well. So therefore, the Torah, and this is where we're going to end today, the Torah did not have to write out all these Arba Avos. The Torah just should have written 1 or 2, and on my own, I would have figured out the rest. Elamai Hilchasa Kasvina Rachmana. What, and this will end with the question, what reason, why did the Torah have to write all the Arba Avos Nezikin if I didn't need that? I could have figured it out on my own, that if the Torah was Mechayev you on 2 of them, I can know the rest. So we'll leave that for tomorrow. Okay.